Heavy D from Diesel Brothers has finally been sentenced to jail, marking a heartbreaking end to his wild journey. What really led to his downfall? Could this truly be the end? The rise of a diesel icon. Dave Sparks, better known as Heavy D, became a familiar name to millions who loved the roar of diesel engines and the thrill of mechanical creativity. His rise to fame began when he co-starred on the Discovery Channel's hit show Diesel Brothers, a program that turned ordinary truck repairs into jaw-dropping transformations. From the moment the show premiered, it stood out for its daring builds, good humor, and sense of teamwork that pulled viewers in from across the world. Diesel Brothers wasn't just another car show, it was a celebration of friendship and passion. Alongside Diesel Dave Kiley, Keaton "The Muscle" Hoskins, and Josh Redbeard Stewart, Heavy D showed audiences how far imagination could go when mixed with skill and determination. Their projects weren't small jobs. They created massive diesel trucks that looked like monsters on wheels, capable of climbing hills, tearing through mud, and pulling impossible weights. Each episode brought something new, a fresh design, an unexpected stunt, or a risky idea that somehow always worked out. Heavy D quickly became the face of the show. With his confident presence, bright energy, and fearless ideas, he captured the hearts of fans who admired his ability to think big. Whether he was welding a new frame, building a huge lift kit, or testing a truck through rough terrain, he carried himself like someone who truly loved what he did. It wasn't just about money or fame for him. It was about pushing the limits of what a truck could be. As Diesel Brothers gained popularity, so did Heavy D's influence. People looked up to him not only as a builder, but also as a leader in the truck community. He represented hard work, freedom, and self-reliance, values deeply rooted in American culture. His personality, both humorous and bold, drew viewers from all walks of life. He became a symbol of what happens when passion meets persistence. The show's success led to more than just entertainment. Heavy D and his team began hosting massive truck giveaways, creating viral moments on social media that attracted even more followers. Their builds became internet sensations, often shared by millions who couldn't believe what they saw. From custom diesel engines to sky-high suspensions, their creations were larger than life, much like the men who built them. But behind all the fame and roaring engines was a simple young man from Utah, a boy whose fascination with machines and hard work would one day fuel a television empire. Background and the foundation of Diesel Sellers. Dave Sparks' story began in the heart of Salt Lake City, Utah, where he was born and raised. Long before he became known as Heavy D, he was simply a curious kid who loved to figure out how things worked. His childhood was filled with the sound of engines and tools, guided by his grandfather, who worked in heavy machinery. From him, Sparks learned more than just mechanics. He learned patience, discipline, and pride in honest labor. As a teenager, Dave spent hours taking apart engines, rebuilding old vehicles, and fixing anything that had moving parts. His interest grew stronger with time, and he decided to study mechanical engineering at Weber State University. But after just 1 year, he realized that classrooms couldn't teach him what real hands-on work could do. He left school, not out of failure, but out of determination to create his own path. Soon after leaving college, Sparks met a man who would become both a mentor and lifelong friend, Diesel Dave Kiley. Together, they shared a passion for diesel power and a belief that anything could be built with the right mindset. They began working on custom vehicles, often experimenting late into the night. Those early days were far from easy. Money was tight, and every project came with new challenges. But their dedication kept them going. It was in those years that Sparks and his team founded Diesel Sellers, a small business that started as an online platform for selling used diesel trucks and parts. What began as a side project quickly evolved into a full-scale custom shop. They built, repaired, and redesigned trucks that caught people's attention for their size, strength, and unique looks. Word spread fast, and before long, Diesel Sellers became a well-known name in Utah's truck community. Dave's business wasn't just about trucks. It was about creating something people could believe in. He valued independence and innovation, refusing to settle for the ordinary. His belief in personal freedom and creativity shaped everything he built. It also reflected his views on government regulations. He believed innovation should never be limited by unnecessary restrictions. At the center of it all was his strong sense of family and teamwork. Sparks valued loyalty above all else. His relationships with his team members, Diesel Dave, Keaton the Muscle Hoskins, and Josh Redbeard Stewart, were built on trust and brotherhood. They weren't just co-workers, they were partners who shared a dream. In 2016, that dream reached new heights when Discovery Channel introduced Diesel Brothers. What began as a local business exploded into national fame. Viewers were immediately drawn to the humor, the wild builds, and the unity that defined the team. The cast's chemistry was natural, their energy contagious, and their projects unbelievable. The team's creativity knew no limits. They built massive lifted trucks, designed unique engines, and created vehicles that looked like something out of a fantasy world. Their online presence grew rapidly, with millions of followers watching every build unfold on YouTube and social media. Their truck giveaways turned into viral events where fans from all over America hoped to win one of their dream creations. Dave Sparks soon became not just a builder, but a leader in the automotive world. His name stood for innovation, faith, and relentless drive. He became a sought-after speaker at truck shows and business events, inspiring others with his journey from small-town mechanic to national icon. What made him truly different was his authenticity. Despite the fame, he remained grounded in his values: hard work, family, and faith. His fans admired his confidence, but also his humility. They saw him as someone who lived his dreams and never forgot where he came from. But success often brings attention, and not all of it is friendly. As Heavy D's empire grew, so did the watchful eyes of regulators, setting the stage for a storm that would test everything he stood for. The legal trouble begins. By the time Diesel Brothers had become a hit, Dave Sparks, better known as Heavy D, was on top of the world. His business was booming, his social media influence was growing fast, and his show had millions of loyal fans. But behind the bright lights and roaring engines, a quiet storm was forming, one that would soon change everything. In the year 2016, a Utah-based environmental organization called Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, UPHE, filed a lawsuit against Heavy D and his team. The group accused the Diesel Brothers of modifying diesel trucks by removing or disabling federally mandated emissions control systems, commonly referred to as deleting. These modifications made trucks more powerful and allowed for easier maintenance, but they also meant the vehicles produced much higher levels of air pollution than what the law allowed. UPHE argued that the trucks the Diesel Brothers customized were not just showpieces or off-road vehicles, but were also being sold and driven on public roads, which violated the Clean Air Act. According to the group, these modifications released large amounts of pollutants that could harm the air quality and public health, especially in Utah's already sensitive air basin. When the case became public, it quickly caught the attention of both environmental activists and fans of the show. For many people, it wasn't just about trucks. It was about freedom, responsibility, and the growing debate between environmental laws and personal choice. Heavy D and his team defended their actions, explaining that their builds were meant for off-road use and that they believed the emission systems limited performance unnecessarily. As the case gained national media attention, it also became a symbol of a larger conflict, one that pitted federal regulations against the diesel community's belief in mechanical independence. To many truck enthusiasts, the Diesel brothers represented innovation and freedom from what they saw as overly strict rules. But to environmental groups, their work represented a blatant disregard for public health and the law. The case slowly made its way through court, becoming more serious with each passing year. Experts and government officials provided evidence showing that vehicles modified in this way could emit dozens of times more pollutants than legally allowed. This data strengthened UPHE's argument that these changes were not only harmful but also illegal under the Clean Air Act, a federal law that had been in place since the 1970s. Despite growing pressure, Heavy D stood firm. He believed that the government was unfairly targeting small businesses like his and that the laws failed to consider the innovation and creativity within the automotive community. His team continued to argue that the modifications were made to improve truck performance for enthusiasts and racers, not to harm the environment. By the year 2020, the court finally reached a decision. The judge ruled in favor of UPHE, stating that Dave Sparks and his team had violated federal emissions laws. The ruling came with heavy consequences. The Diesel brothers were ordered to pay fines totaling $850,000. In addition, the court banned them from selling, promoting, or installing any emissions-deleted vehicles or parts. The decision was a major blow. For years, Heavy D had built his reputation on the idea of freedom and mechanical creativity. Now, he faced a judgment that challenged the very foundation of what he stood for. Instead of stepping back, he made it clear that he disagreed with the outcome. Sparks publicly expressed his disappointment, insisting that the ruling punished honest mechanics and truck builders. He believed that emissions technology did little to protect the environment compared to its cost and effect on performance. In his view, the Clean Air Act was being used unfairly against innovators. Some of his closest partners chose to settle and move on. Keaton the Muscle. Hoskins later admitted that he had bought out of the case, saying it was impossible to fight against a system that always favored the government. But Sparks refused to pay the fines or accept the ruling quietly. He saw it as a matter of principle, a stand against what he considered an attack on individual freedom and business independence. As the legal tension grew, so did public attention. Fans rallied behind him, calling the situation unfair, while critics accused him of ignoring environmental responsibility. The debate reached far beyond Utah, turning into a national discussion about emissions laws and the balance between innovation and environmental protection. Despite the controversy, Heavy D continued working on projects and appearing online, never showing signs of backing down. His refusal to comply with the ruling became part of his image, that of a man unwilling to compromise his beliefs, no matter the cost. What started as a simple lawsuit now threatened his career, reputation, and livelihood. Yet even as the pressure mounted, he remained unshaken, believing he was fighting for something bigger than himself. Arrest and controversy. By the fall of 2025, the long-running conflict between Dave Sparks and the federal court reached its breaking point. On Tuesday, October 7th, in the state of Utah, Heavy D was arrested after a judge found him in contempt of court. The reason was simple but serious. He had refused to pay the $850,000 in fines ordered by the court 5 years earlier. His arrest was the result of years of defiance and ongoing non-compliance with the judgment that stemmed from the diesel deletion lawsuit. While some of his co-defendants had chosen to settle or pay their penalties, Sparks continued to protest. He believed the law was wrong and that he should not have to pay for what he saw as harmless mechanical modifications. News of the arrest spread quickly across social media, stunning fans and fueling fierce debate. Videos surfaced of Sparks being taken into custody, and soon hashtags supporting him began to trend. His followers praised him for standing by his principles, calling him a man of courage who refused to be silenced. Others, however, saw it as the natural outcome of years of ignoring court orders. Adding more complexity to his situation were Sparks' own public statements. In one of his recent Instagram videos, he had claimed that diesel particulate filters, also known as DPFs, did not stop trucks from reaching top performance levels. This statement contradicted his earlier arguments that emissions systems held back performance, weakening his legal position. Around that same time, he appeared in a commercial with Ram's chief executive officer, Tim Kuniskis. The advertisement celebrated the return of the Hemi V8 engine and carried a rebellious tone that many fans interpreted as a subtle protest against modern environmental rules. While the ad was intended as entertainment, it only added more attention to his already controversial image. The truck community was instantly divided. Many of his loyal supporters believed his arrest symbolized the government's overreach into private industry. They argued that environmental laws were being used as tools to punish entrepreneurs who dared to think differently. Some even framed Sparks as a hero who stood up to what they saw as unfair green policies. One of his most vocal defenders was Corey Willis, a fellow diesel influencer who had also faced legal troubles in the past. Willis had paid a fine of over $3 million in 2021 for similar deletion work, but maintained that the government was targeting small businesses. He called Sparks' arrest an act of protest and claimed it exposed flaws in environmental enforcement. However, not everyone agreed with that view. Environmental advocates and legal analysts pointed out that the Clean Air Act had not changed, even under the Trump administration, and deleting emission systems remained illegal at the federal level. They argued that Sparks had been given multiple chances to comply and that his arrest was a consequence of ignoring the law, not a political act. Online discussions quickly turned heated. Some fans used hashtags supporting Sparks, while others demanded accountability, saying that no one should be above the law. The arguments reflected a deeper divide in American culture between those who value freedom from government regulation and those who prioritize environmental protection. Media outlets covered the story widely, highlighting how one of television's most popular mechanics had become entangled in a federal controversy. For years, Heavy D had been a symbol of innovation, but now he was seen by some as a symbol of resistance, a man unwilling to compromise, even at the cost of his own freedom. As he awaited further legal proceedings, supporters continued to post messages of encouragement. They shared old clips from Diesel Brothers, calling him a fighter for small businesses and mechanical freedom. Yet others saw the arrest as a warning that fame and influence do not shield anyone from the consequences of their actions. But even amidst his arrest, Heavy D's story was far from over. Sparks isn't alone. Other diesel crackdowns and the price of defiance. The story of Dave Sparks, known to many as Heavy D, didn't unfold in isolation. His legal struggles were part of a much larger wave of enforcement actions targeting diesel mechanics and influencers who modified or deleted emission systems. While Sparks' case drew massive media attention, it wasn't the first or the last time federal authorities took action against those defying environmental laws. Across the United States, others faced similar charges, proving that the crackdown wasn't about personalities or fame, but about a law that applied to everyone equally. In June 2024, Tony Lake, a respected diesel mechanic from Wyoming, became another example of what happens when passion collides with regulation. Lake, who had built a loyal customer base over the years, was accused of violating the Clean Air Act by tampering with emission systems. He pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 1 year and 1 day in prison, along with over $50,000 in fines. His case shocked many in the diesel community because Lake wasn't a television star or influencer. He was a small-town mechanic who loved engines. Supporters argued that Lake's punishment was too harsh. Even Senator Cynthia Lummis, a vocal advocate for Wyoming workers, stood up for him. She joined others in asking former President Trump to grant Lake a pardon, describing the mechanic as a victim of government overreach. But despite their efforts, the law stood firm. Lake served his sentence, a reminder that the Clean Air Act didn't bend for political pressure or public sympathy. The contrast between Lake's case and Sparks was striking. While Lake gained political backing and public empathy, Sparks found himself isolated. Despite his fame and fan base, no high-profile figures came forward to defend him. Perhaps it was because his defiance was louder and more public. His open refusal to comply with court orders and his bold criticism of the legal system turned his fight from a personal stand into a symbol of rebellion. Yet that same defiance stripped him of allies who might have supported him if he had chosen cooperation instead. Over the years, federal enforcement of diesel emissions law has remained consistent across political lines. Whether under Republican or Democratic administrations, the Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Justice have maintained the same message. Emissions tampering is illegal, regardless of intention. These actions weren't about silencing innovation, but about controlling pollution that contributes to health issues and environmental damage. For mechanics like Lake and influencers like Sparks, this reality clashed with their view of freedom and mechanical creativity. As Sparks sat behind bars, his story became a warning to others. The penalties were not just about money or fame, they were about accountability. His businesses suffered as sponsors distanced themselves and television networks avoided public comment. What once made him an icon of diesel culture now weighed heavily against him in courtrooms and public opinion. Some of his loyal fans continue to see him as a fighter, someone willing to stand up against what they viewed as excessive regulation. To them, he represented the voice of hard-working Americans who felt left out of national conversations about environmental policy. But others in the diesel industry began to rethink their approach. Shops that once offered delete services started advertising EPA-compliant upgrades instead. The message was clear: the risks weren't worth the reward. Despite his downfall, no one could deny Sparks' influence on modern truck culture. He had inspired a generation of builders, mechanics, and enthusiasts who viewed trucks as more than machines. They were expressions of identity, craftsmanship, and rebellion. His rise had shown what creativity and charisma could achieve, but his fall revealed what pride and defiance could cost. The government's consistent enforcement, combined with rising public awareness of environmental issues, meant there was no turning back. The era of televised truck modifications without consequences was ending. Sparks' arrest signaled the close of a chapter not just for him, but for an entire culture that had thrived on pushing limits. For many who once tuned in weekly to watch Diesel Brothers, the realization was bittersweet. They admired Sparks' energy and innovation, but could no longer ignore the legal reality surrounding his choices. His name would forever be linked with both inspiration and controversy, a man who built an empire from his garage and then risked it all to stand by his beliefs. Even after everything, Sparks' story continues to spark debate. Was he unfairly targeted, or was he a man who ignored repeated warnings? So, what happens to Heavy D now that the dust has settled? What's next for Heavy D? The end of Dave Sparks' story feels like watching a roaring engine finally stall. After years of fame, defiance, and bold declarations, reality has caught up with him. His arrest in October 2025 marked not just a legal turning point, but a personal one. The once celebrated face of Diesel Brothers now stands at a crossroads, facing the weight of decisions that could define the rest of his life. With fines still unpaid, Sparks faces the possibility of jail time if he continues to defy the court's orders. The Clean Air Act violations combined with the contempt ruling have placed him in one of the most serious positions of his career. Federal judges have made it clear that failure to comply will bring heavier consequences. What began as a fight for creative freedom has now become a struggle for his future. The Discovery Channel, which once proudly showcased his larger-than-life personality, has remained silent. No statements have been made about whether he will appear in future projects or if Diesel Brothers will ever return. The uncertainty has left fans uneasy. For years, Sparks and his team represented hard work, brotherhood, and mechanical brilliance. Now, all that energy hangs in the air, uncertain and unresolved. Outside the television world, his businesses face growing challenges. Without compliance, he could lose licenses or face additional penalties. Sponsors have pulled back, wary of associating their names with legal controversy. The once busy shop that built towering trucks for fans across the nation now sits under the shadow of legal red tape. Yet, despite the silence from networks and business partners, fans have not forgotten him. Across social media, the hashtag #ChawnChuGoodbyeHeavyD continues to trend. Posts filled with admiration, memories, and support flood the internet daily. Some write about how his show inspired them to pursue mechanics. Others express sadness over the downfall of someone they once saw as unstoppable. The tag has become both a farewell and a tribute, a way to say thank you to the man who made diesel culture feel exciting and alive. But even in the midst of admiration, there is sorrow. For every supporter who calls him a hero, there is another who sees his story as a cautionary tale. His refusal to compromise, while admired by some, is viewed by others as the very choice that cost him everything. Fame, influence, and opportunity have all been overshadowed by one act of defiance that refused to bend. Now, the man who once stood at the center of roaring engines faces a quiet road ahead. Whether or not he returns to the screen, his legacy in the diesel world is secure, but it comes with lessons. What do you think about the legal troubles and the arrest of Heavy D? Do you think he made the right choice by choosing jail over fine? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more exciting stories about your favorite stars.